I think we're ready to go. So
Yep.
I'm going to share a screen and which has your slides. But I think all of you may know how to shrink this. If you go and you exit the full screen, and you can shrink it so that you can continue to see all the faces on your Zoom. And I think that will be enjoyable so that you can see people as well. So let me close out. Can people see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to see if I can. I want to try to minimize that so that you're not seeing. Okay, so we're going to start with. Okay. I sent you the slides, you know what order you're in, but I'm going to start with Jianshuan Li, if I have the name pronounced correctly. You can all read the context, the text here. And so I'm not going to reread that, but I'm going to turn it over to Jianshuan to say a little bit about this important paper, what he learned, and you can take it away. And I'll give you a little time at 4 minutes so we can move on to the next person.
Thank you, Rose. Hello, everyone. My name is Jian Xuan, and I'm actually a first-year PhD student at the University of Minnesota. And I'm very glad to be here today to receive the DCDC Best Paper Award on my work on trade unions and the legal strands. The paper is about, it's more about how some broad characteristics of the legal system, like the political system, can improve or constraints what trade unions do for workers. So although I studied from the Chinese context, I think there are some more general implications that we can address in terms of union revitalization. Basically, the main argument is that when we have more responsive legal system, when we have great legal enforcement, think about how inefficient for the NLRB to deal with some grievance cases. It takes like 6 to 7 years. And also when we have more legal resources, we actually find that unions can improve workers' working conditions on to a great extent. That's the basic argument. So since I'm very new to the field of industrial relations, I don't have a lot to say about the research experience. I actually want to thank the LERA Great LERA community, and particularly to my advisor, Professor John Batt at the University of Minnesota. I started from very limited data and a very undefined idea, but John is able to give me a lot of comments and suggestions to help me push my ideas forward. And I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Well, that was very quick. And so maybe people may have a question or two to ask you about maybe what you plan to do next with your research or how it was received in China. But other people, do you have questions? Just turn on your mic and go ahead.
I have a quick question. Is this going to be published, or is this something, is it the basis for a thesis, or this was just a paper, from, you said your first year, so I was curious.
Oh, yes, I studied as part of my master's program, but our master's program really doesn't require a thesis. So I'm currently working on this paper to revise it and submit it to a journal. So I'm still working on this.
Other people? So I have a question, which is, do you have a sense of how your paper is received in China, and what's happening with the conditions of trade unions in China when there is a lot of turmoil around worker voice?
That's a really great question, and I think these are really complicated. Basically, another element of this paper is really we want to say Chinese unions they have a more complex identity. It's not just a apparatus of the state or tool for the management, but it also have a work identity there, although it's kind of weak. And we try to see that there should be some more complex understanding of Chinese unions and how that can interact with legal strengths. The basic point is that we actually try to identify a way that Chinese unions can really help workers because they are work representatives, just not instead of like a managerial tool or like a state apparatus. So, but I think the point valid that this channel is still kind of weak at the moment.
Great. Well, thank you for your great paper. And I'm going to move on to the next award winner, who is Debbie Goldman. And I'll just say briefly, I know Debbie because she helped me with my dissertation in the 90s when she was in the research department of the CWA. And in that tough job in recent years, she's gone back and gotten a PhD in history and written this award-winning dissertation on her wonderful years of working with call center workers in the Bell system. So Debbie, congratulations.
Thank you, Rose. And I have to return all the compliments because Rose has also been both helped me as I would struggle with writing up all that I had gathered. And she really is the leading scholar, and now her student Virginia are the leading scholars of call centers. And Rose has moved on to financialization, which also really helped me in one of my chapters, her work. And I'm very moved to be looking at the faces on this screen and seeing some labor historians that I read when I first started studying, and labor journalist Stephen Greenhouse, who your book, whenever somebody says, what's the one book I can give to my kids so they can understand unions? I now give them your book. So thank you for writing that, because we didn't have one before that, I don't think. So Rose said that we were supposed to talk about, I think, what we enjoyed about writing our work. And what I enjoyed about it was that for 28 years, I had one of my assignments out of the headquarters research department at CWA was to be assisting our members who worked in the call centers in the former Bell companies, Verizon, AT&T, et cetera. And what I really enjoyed about writing was giving voice to these mostly women who are incredible leaders and activists and truly devoted, and who had to struggle amidst so many challenges. My dissertation goes from, I would never call it the good old days, but people now who worked in the Bell system call it the good old days before the breakup of the AT&T in 1984, when under monopoly and under New Deal labor regulation, there was a stability to employment and a stability to improving wages and benefits. But once competition really became the policy in the telecom industry in the 90s, and especially in the late 90s and early 2000s, the pressures, yes, being a customer service rep was more important, but at the same time, the call center workers were on the front lines dealing with increasingly frustrated customers, and they were not seen as a value creator, but instead as a cost center. And what that meant was using technology to surveil. And if you read about what Amazon workers are suffering now, it's been extensive to surveil, to speed up, to intensify and degrade the job. So what I really enjoyed, and what the leaders in these units had to do, was not only struggle against the employers, but they also had to struggle within the union to elevate the issues, their issues, the issues of the women, And Janice, I will say that they learned a lot from the operators who had done this within the CWA, and they took many of the things they learned to elevate their issues. But as you all as employment relations scholars know, it is very challenging to bargain over working conditions and job control. And that's what they were bargaining over. And so they tried labor management partnerships, organizing, bargaining, and the dissertation culminates with the description of the strike against Verizon in the year 2000, which I would call the apex of the story, in that by then they had made their issues of stress relief a bargaining issue and a strike issue that over 70,000 people from Maine until Virginia went on strike until they won some stress relief. So it was wonderful to express the stories of these women. And I'm very pleased that I am now working on turning this into a book with a contract from the University of Illinois Press. And that's a struggle in itself too. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Debbie. And I'm going to put my little hand up when you see that go up, that means your time is up. Chunyun Lee has won the Scoville Prize for Best International Comparative Paper. And I'll take it, give it to you.
Okay, thank you. It's my honor to have this award. It's based on my dissertation. So for that, I need to thank Doug Cruz. At that time, Doug was the program director in my program. And so I had to enjoy the flexibility and support to go to the field work. So I didn't know, like, I'm from Chinese background, so as you know, the Chinese union are not like working properly as well that he was describing. So I didn't know much about organizing. So at that time, I really appreciated the chance to work with labor NGO, alternative organizations who organize workers and help them to bargain and strike to coordinate actions. So I stayed there for 1 year and then write up my dissertation. So and my dissertation won the Best Dissertation Award too. And this was not only encouraging to me, it's also very encouraging news to the NGOs and the labor activists in China. For them, it seems like an international recognition for their action, because usually scholars may think there's no labor movement, like a typical strike, like labor movement in China. But now, like that, I wrote out their story and I won this award, and it's a very good news for them too. So for me, I really enjoy this experience to interact with them. It's very inspiring for me to see that the ordinary people, workers, when they come together, they can force the employer to come to the bargaining table, and even they say, oh, tens of millions of like RMB throughout a bargaining. They want this. It's impossible for them to imagine as an ordinary people in a daily life. But it's encouraging for me to write up their stories in these articles and the dissertation. And in terms of the impact, I think it's a good news for them, but not that good for me, because like I became a list in the watch scholars there. So security people visited me. I don't know, that's a positive impact or negative impact, but anyway, so I couldn't like say go on too much with these projects, but I think the people that I want to impact, the labor activists, I am still able to help them, and then it's still encouragement to them, but not so much to the security people or the government people. But still, yeah, I'm grateful that this reward is a like recognition for the activists that I studied and for to their story. I think it's a like support or like a solidarity to Chinese workers and Chinese NGOs.
Well, that's great. Thank you for that wonderful explanation of how your work has impacted activists in China. We do have a minute or so if people want to ask a question or comment on what Chunyun has said.
I just had one question. Chunyun, and when you were saying about workers, being able to organize and take action, was this more likely in foreign-owned factories or in Chinese-owned factories?
So for the factories that I study and in the region, in Guangdong region, southern China, actually it's more likely to happen in foreign-owned companies, especially Japanese-owned company, because this so the organizers they're very smart. They mobilize many kind of sentiment to organize more workers. So for this Japanese type of companies, they use the anti-Chinese Japan conflicts to mobilize workers. And for like I think there are many cases about like strike against foreign American investing company too, like IBM and also Nokia, many company, international company. For them, I think the bargaining chip they realize is that for these foreign companies, they have the profits, enough financial resources to support this bargaining. But for many of the domestic companies, they are in a more lower end, and then the company management system tend to be less advanced and less respect for the laws, and there's less chance to do that. But they still do that, but they tend to target like these more foreign invested companies.
Thank you. That was perfect. So we're moving on. And I'm sorry, apparently we spelled your name wrong, Lee. So we apologize for that. Rachel Alex won the Dunlop Award for the Outstanding Scholar Practitioner of a paper concerning the U.S. domestic environment, but she's not here today. So we're going to move on to Chiara Benassi, who is at King's College and is a rising star in comparative international research and has won an award for her important paper. I'm sorry, Chiara, if you can say what your paper is about. We didn't put it up here as we should have.
My understanding was that it was about my research more generally, because I didn't send a paper.
Okay.
But thanks a lot for this award, and thanks to Rose and also Ginny Dolgust. I started my PhD with Ginny. I did my PhD with Virginia Dolgust at the LSE, and my initial research was about agency work in the German metal industry, and I've studied qualitatively how skills and tasks in the factories changed, so that it became easier for employers to use contingent workers. And I also studied then how unions reacted to the employment of contingent workers, how they tried to bargain for agency workers and to organize them. And I was thinking about my research, and I think so all the important themes that I'm still researching now, they started really at the LSE under the supervision with Ginny. So I still work on unions and their strategies to organize precarious workers. And I'm interested in the conditions under which unions are able to organize or bargain for agency workers, contingent workers. And I had the chance to study this issue in many different countries. That's the luxury of being in Europe, I guess. You don't have to travel very long to get to a completely different institutional context. Also, thanks to my co-authors like Ginny Dolgust, Lisa from Milan, Tim Blandas in Oxford, and recently a team of researchers from Portugal. And then I also continue studying work organization, and in particular, how work at the assembly line can be organized in such a way that manual workers can actually use their skills. And I just finished a big research project funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, which took me to automotive companies in Italy, UK, and Germany. And I could interview trade unionists and works councillors and find out more about the work organization and how workers can use their skills in a very routine job that we very often think is completely automated very routine. Only machines workers work like cogs in the machines, but actually there is a lot that workers can contribute to. And then finally, so the last theme that I had started at the LSE and I continued working on is the effect of institutions of industrial relations, or mainly the effect of the decline of industrial relations on employer strategies and workers' outcomes. And in particular, I worked on this topic with my mentor, Lucio Baccaro from the Max Planck Institute. And we in particular, so we are looking and we have looked at big changes in industrial relations, especially in Germany, which continues to be the country that I study the most, and how these changes affected inequality patterns in the country. And this is more or less what I did and what I am still doing. And hopefully now that things are a bit easier with COVID, I can go back to the field again and start doing more qualitative research.
Fabulous. And next year you can join us in Detroit.
Yes, that would be
The
awesome.
auto capital of the world, so you can study auto workers in Detroit.
Yes,
Okay.
I'd love to.
Okay, I'm going to move on. We're now going to move to the Kenneth May Media Award. And we have, I believe, only Michael Sanato here, unfortunately, but that gives you some time to really tell us about your work and what you have enjoyed most in, and what are you focused on most in recent times. So Michael, thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, and it's an honor to receive this award. You know, my favorite part of this work is just giving workers a voice who are often experiencing some of the most difficult times of their careers or lives for, you know, a variety of economic reasons, just depending on the context of the story. And the past couple of years has been, I think, really exciting for everyone in the labor movement. You know, just last year, Striketober, that whole, you know, couple of months of seeing strike after strike was, I think, really exciting. And, you know, even now, everyone's excited about the labor movement, talking about its resurgence, and watching a lot of grassroots efforts pop up at Amazon, ongoing at Starbucks. You know, Apple has a union election in a couple of weeks, and you know, really the public, I think, is getting more aware of how companies respond to these union drives. And you know, just a few years ago, that landscape, I think, was completely different. So I think it's been really exciting to watch that unfold over the past few years, especially during the pandemic, and watching, you know, workers, you know, push for democracy in their workplaces, you know, fight for better wages and fight against bosses that are in workplaces that are, you know, abusive and squeeze as much as they can out of these workers for wages that, you know, frankly, is a struggle to live on. So yeah, I think it's a really exciting time for the labor movement.
Great. And you know, that's been a big theme in this in the labor, in the LERA meetings this time, and of course more generally. Would anyone like to ask Michael a question or comment on these themes? Debbie.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you and the other journalists for doing what you do, especially you. You really cover this oh well. Are you? I've been listening to some panels with some of the young workers who've been active in the various campaigns. Are you finding that what's going on is success and knowledge in one place is energizing people in another place and another place, another place, and importance of social media, especially, sorry about that,
No, I definitely think so. I mean, a lot of workers are getting attention recently for going viral on TikTok. That Reddit page, anti-work, that blew up from nothing to it looks like one of the Reddit's more popular pages right now. And every time I talk to workers about a different union organizing campaign, they cite Starbucks workers for an inspiration, or the Amazon workers were an inspiration, or you know, things like that, or you know, other worker, you know, seeing other workers, you know, seeing a Dollar General worker go viral a few months ago and wanting to get involved from that. So I think you know, social media, especially with younger workers, using and knowing how to use these apps, are really, you know, putting themselves out there, telling their stories, and I think that connects with workers all over the country because you know, it gives people a chance to show that they're not alone, they're not the only ones experiencing things like low pay or understaffing or lack of benefits or you know, conditions specific to you know, specific companies.
So that's great. Thank you. And I am going to move on to stay on time. And if other people have comments, of course, you can throw them in the chat. But let's move on. Now we're going to the LERA Practitioner Fellow Awards, which are fabulous. And I think we have Erin Johansson and Mickey Brock and Sheila here. And I'm going to give each of you 4 minutes. So we'll start with Erin.
So I really appreciate the award and the recognition. I remember going to my first LERA conference the year I started this job, which was in 2004. I was with American Rights at Work at the time, and then we later merged into Jobs with Justice. So, so I've been at this work for quite a while now, almost 20 years. And just echoing what Michael said, it does feel like a really different and a really exciting time. And you know, if you asked me about this work like 5 years ago, I would have said, it's hard, you know, the relationships are important. That's what sustains you, enjoying the actual research and the working with colleagues and working with organizers. But now I really feel like sustained and energized from what's happening in the campaign world and the coverage of it too. And I remember Stephen Greenhouse would write an article about union busting, and we'd be promoting that for like years because that would be the only article on union busting. And now it's just amazing just to see, you know, all of the coverage and all of the reporters, new reporters covering this work. And then of course, just it's so inspiring how brave people are walking off the job and standing up and knowing they're, you know, that they're going to be fired likely, or their coworkers are going to be fired. And they're doing it anyway. And that's just, it just feels really a really exciting time to be doing this work. So I appreciate LERA. It's offered me a great chance to meet really amazing people and colleagues. And so thank you for the award.
And I would just add that, Erin, your role in organizing, leading LRON has been amazing. And I know that we've piggybacked some years, and I really hope we continue to do that because the labor activists and the LRON network, we need their energy, and hopefully we can provide you know, reflection and opportunities too. So I really, I think what you built through the LRON network is fabulous, and we need to work together more and more. And we've done some great collaborations in the past. So let me just open it up. Would anyone like to comment on Erin's observations or ask questions?
I have a quick question. It strikes me that there are people interested in like joining a union or some worker group now. They're interested now. And I would have said, why weren't people like that interested 10 or 15 years ago? I mean, they have this view that unions are only for blue collar people or, you know, the downtrodden. Has there been some change in people's mentality that they realize that most workers probably need a union. I was just wondering what you think.
I mean, just an off the cuff observation, I think it's a lot of the it is being driven by younger people, not young people, but people that don't carry the same good or bad impressions of unions that maybe folks in the older generation carry from when unions were more powerful, and so therefore often, you know, people don't. So it's kind of like a clean slate, and so I think that's some of maybe the dynamic now, and it's also, you know, it's a very desperate time for people too, who are carrying a lot of debt, and so the pandemic has just exacerbated that. So I think that's also part of it.
That's really an interesting point about that unions, frankly, having such a small percentage of the private sector workforce that lots of people don't have any stereotypes about it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Erin. Great reflections. We're going to move to Mickey Brock. And you can tell us more about what you do as an arbitrator and mediator. And congratulations.
I will do that. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Mickey Brock, and I've kind of written these comments down, so I'm going to read some of it and then add to it. But I'm really humbled to have, and it's really a great honor to have received this one of the 22 LERA Practitioner Fellow Awards. And I consider it an achievement of a lifetime, so it's very much appreciated. I'm president of Greater Houston LERA chapter, and I've just gotten into that role at the beginning of the year. I'm a relatively new arbitrator. I'm on the FNCS panel, and I had a long career in the chemical industry on the management side, which is kind of in the minority, I guess, in this organization. But I've been in an aggressive and adversarial relationship with unions, but that morphed into a really strong working relationship with unions that I think really produced some good results. So I've seen it both ways, and I think the working together really works much better. My career focus was mainly in labor relations and human resources. And there were two things that I just wanted to highlight briefly. One was our chapter, along with Walter Darr, the former president, and our board of directors, really reinvigorated the Houston chapter. And I think an important aspect of that has been more frequent and improved programming and spreading the word and getting that word out. We were able to double our membership, which was good. And the second thing that I've really enjoyed greatly is I had the privilege of working really closely with Emily and Bernadette. Probably too closely from their perspective, but working on some significant systems issues that we had. I really think part of it, a good bit of it, was probably my inexperience with that, but they were patient with me and worked through that, and I think that improved my capabilities. But it was just great working with them. They're both terrific, and I'm just wanted to express my sincere appreciation at National LERA and those associated with this award for this significant honor. It's really something that I'll always treasure. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mickey. And I would just like to say, trying to do labor relations in Houston, Texas is a hard row to hoe. So kudos to you. And any comments or questions? We got a minute. Anyone want to add to that? Okay, we're going to move on and we can always circle back if we have some time at the end. So Sheila Mayberry, also an arbitrator and mediator, please share with us what you have done recently and what you're proud of. And congratulations.
Well, thank you. This was quite an unexpected award, especially when I look back to see who has received this award in the past, especially Marcia Greenbaum, who is no longer with us, but she was a trailblazer for women in the field of labor arbitration. So I am awestruck to be following her and Dick Pincher and so many other arbitrators that I have looked up to over almost 40 years of doing this at this point. And your question, what in the recent past has been significant to me? And I would say that while COVID has been devastating to our country and to our livelihoods, and in my field, especially to labor arbitration. I live in New England, and many of my colleagues were going to retire in 2020. Many of them have had a wonderful career, and they didn't see a way forward. I happen to be the co-chair of the New England NAA region with Bonnie McSpirit, and we were on the phone one Saturday morning, and I said, this can't be so. This isn't going to happen. We have to do something about this. And so Bonnie and I taught ourselves how to run a Zoom hearing, and even though I'm in my 60s, I'm literally the youngest labor arbitrator in New England. And so we decided to teach everyone what we had learned ourselves. So we had many labor arbitrators work with us every morning at 10 o'clock for about a month. Every morning, it was a new job we all had. 10 o'clock, how to do Zoom, and we did it. And even today, we still meet at 10 a.m. on Fridays, not to learn about Zoom anymore, because now we're experts. But we talk about our cases, and this is something that had never happened before. Because this is a pretty isolating job. You don't talk to your colleagues every day. You don't see them every day. But this has brought the labor arbitrators in New England so much closer than we had been before, ever. And we're teaching each other new things every week, Fridays at 10 a.m. And now we're bringing in newer arbitrators, which is a joy for us, because we need them, as I just told you about my age and others. So I have gone on to teach the FMCS ballot class this year, and the Labor Guild in Boston, the Labor Guild courses for employees who want to learn how to do arbitration work, AAA classes, and I'm just having a ball. And this world of mine has kind of made a circle, because I started working for $11.99 way back in my other life. And so now it's coming full circle. I have had a ball. I've been part of this process, the labor management dispute resolution process, forever, and it's been a wonderful ride.
Thank you, Sheila. Those are great stories, and I hope you're able to use LERA to facilitate all the networking you're doing.
Oh yeah, well, John Alfano and I founded the main LERA chapter. So, and that's still going strong. And the Boston chapter is now up and running again. And by the way, I also wanted to tell Mickey that sooner than later, I want to see his membership application to the NAA, because now I'm the membership chair and I'm looking for members.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, we're going to move to now the LERA Academic Fellows. And we have, unfortunately, Sarosh Karuvala is in the field and Francoise could not join us at the last minute, but Chris Tilley and Doug Cruz are with us. And I'm bringing down the slide of people so that you can see each other more in the shared screen. I hope that works for you all. So Chris.
Well, Francoise actually passed along some remarks for me to make on her behalf. We're both really honored to be receiving this award. Honored to be receiving it with Sarosh and Doug. Honored to be receiving it with this group of other awardees. I mean, this is just a phenomenal group that speaks to the strengths of LERA. And I just want to say for myself, LERA has been my home base since graduate school, intellectually and in terms of networking and learning. So it's really gratifying to be recognized in this way. So what Francoise asked me to say, it's not 4 minutes, but she had 4 points. What she's most enjoyed in fieldwork, the interviews with workers. Number 2, the kind of cross-national US-European work on the role of societal effects on work and job quality. Number 3, in her words, collaboration with Chris Tilley. And number 4, she said, above all, she enjoys aiming and trying to make a difference with and for workers. So I could echo all of those, of course, substituting Francoise, but actually I'm going to say something more focused, which I'd come up with independently before Francoise texted me what she wanted me to say for her. I think what I've enjoyed most is just a fabulous set of collaborators over decades. And Francoise is one of them, but I would also mention Randy Albelda at UMass Boston, Phil Moss at UMass Lowell, Georgina Rojas at Ciezas in Mexico. And these are people who are super smart, super collaborative, and who've become great friends as well as collaborators. And I really couldn't ask for anything better in terms of enjoying the research process than working with folks like these. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, who would like to jump in and ask questions or comments for Chris?
Well, I'll jump in. Chris, your work has been really helpful for me in understanding so many things. Can you give us 30 seconds about what your current project is or projects?
Well, I'm still working on 2 streams of work. The one that's more active right now is with Francoise. We're continuing to look at how technological change is reshaping jobs in store-based retail. And have gone from sort of a broad scan to focusing on a small number of key technologies that are really affecting frontline workers. And intrigued by the evidence that the shift to increased fulfillment from store work may actually be expanding the number of store jobs, which is a little counterintuitive in the technological context. The other thing that's been really more on a back burner because of the difficulties of doing fieldwork during the pandemic is continuing to have an ongoing interest in looking comparatively at informal worker organizing and basically focusing in at this point on Mexico and the United States. So hope to be able to get back to that in the coming months.
So I would just add, anyone else want to jump in? I would just add that for a long time, I was called the call center queen, but Chris and Francoise have always been the king and queen of retail. So we have these, as you probably know, the industry studies streams that over time have led us to concentrate or use industries as our laboratories. And certainly what Chris and Francoise have done in lifting up the voices of retail workers and giving us an understanding of the difficulties that they face has been really amazing. And the review, the ILR review, which I co-edit, has a special series on novel technologies at work. And this May issue, this coming issue, we're featuring Chris and Francois' research on technology and how it's invading retail. So do look for that. And I want to turn to Doug Cruz now.
Okay, very glad to be part of this. And like Chris, I am honored to be part of this illustrious group. And I use that term illustrious quite seriously. This is absolutely great. Let me just offer a couple of words about my my own research. My research is broadly split between employee ownership and profit sharing on the one hand, and disability on the other hand. And those really haven't overlapped much in my research, although I'm working on a paper now that will have some overlap. But even though they don't overlap much, as I think about it, they have similar motives. My interest in employee ownership and profit sharing has to do with increasing the control that workers have over their lives. And my interest in disability has to do with increasing the control that people with disabilities have over their lives. So there's a similar motive there. On the employee ownership and profit sharing side, most of the studies in the field have been done on productivity and employee ownership and economic performance conceived fairly narrowly. And I've done some of those studies myself. What I think is most interesting, though, are the broader effects. In fact, my original interest as an undergrad, I read Carol Pateman's Participation in Democratic Theory and became very interested in the spillover effects of workplace democracy on political democracy in general. And that's really motivated my interest. And I'm also interested in how employee ownership can affect, relates to inequality, job security. We actually did a study finding that employee-owned companies were less likely than non-employee-owned companies to lay off workers during the pandemic, as well as in prior recessions. And I think that's fascinating. Can employee ownership contribute to job security of workers? So really, it's all about giving people more control over their lives. Like Chris as well, I do have to give shout out to some of my collaborators, in particular with the employee ownership and profit sharing, Joseph Blasi, who was he was one of my senior thesis advisors way back when I was an undergrad, back in the age of the dinosaur. He was one of my advisors then and has been a wonderful friend and colleague ever since. My CV would not be half as long without him. In addition, another of my advisors for my senior thesis was Richard Freeman. And I am very gratified that he became very interested in this area of employee ownership and profit sharing. And he's actually been part of the conferences we've held on employee ownership. We've held 2 a year over the past 12 years. He's become very engaged in that. He's a wonderful colleague. I don't need to sing the praises of Richard Freeman to this crowd, I'm sure. On the disability side, of course, I have to give a shout out to my beloved colleague, Lisa Shore, who also happens to be my wife. Our marriage was going so well that we decided to subject it to the strains of co-authorship. And I'm glad to say it survived, but it is a real test for a relationship to correct each other's grammar. If your relationship can survive that, it's very strong. So I'll just mention the last thing I'll mention is kind of a funny little story. I became motivated to study disability by my own experience. As I think a lot of you know, I'm in a wheelchair myself with a spinal cord injury because Lisa and I were hit by a drunk driver back in 1990. As I was getting into disability research after that, I was about to make a a presentation, research presentation, and I asked one of my colleagues, Angelo Denisi, who happens to be a psychologist. I asked him if I should mention my own disability at the beginning of my research presentation. And he said, absolutely, without a doubt, you should not hesitate at all to admit that you are, in fact, an economist. So thanks, Angela. That's not the disability I was thinking about, but I suppose one could see it that way.
Okay, thank you. And kudos to Lisa. Thank you for being here. And now we've got just a couple more and we're doing well on our time. So now to Jasmine Platt and Ronald Schatz for their work, their awards for the Susan C. Eaton Research Grant Award. And let's start with Jasmine.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry, I've got the giggles after that last joke, so I'm trying to work off the giggles a little bit. My name is Jasmine Platt. I'm a third-year PhD candidate in public policy and administration at Boise State University. I'm up, as everyone is, I'm absolutely honored to be here and among just a great cohort of award winners and learning a lot just in this last hour about new directions that we can all take our research. I personally come to this group as, I guess, from the policy perspective, from a regulatory perspective. I would, I guess, group my research into intersectoral regulatory compliance. It's a lot of big, nasty words. But during my MPA, I worked at the Idaho Transportation Department, and now as a doctoral candidate, I recently got a job with the U.S. Department of Transportation. So I'm working my way up, but I've always tried to be a practitioner and a scholar at the same time, and try to honor both of those in the research that I'm doing, just knowing the lived experience from things like non-compliance and labor onto the people that are affected by government services. And especially in my case, my research is on the Davis-Bacon Act. So basically the population for my research is vulnerable construction workers on Federal Highway Administration funded contracts through the state departments of transportation. So it's a kind of small, silent, nefarious problem, knowing that the people that are building our roads are potentially not getting paid federally mandated wages. I got pulled into a wage and hour investigation pretty soon into my second job at the transportation department, and saw things that were so bad, I decided to write a dissertation about it. So here we are. I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm finishing up my first paper right now, which is titled, of course it has a pun because it's a boring paper, it has to have a pun in the title, Vulnerable Workers Don't Take Home the Davis-Bacon. And so far it's had some really great results in maybe not so great ways, but being able to kind of determine state level policy aspects that will predict non-compliance. And we've actually just had some really interesting results that when the paper's done, I'd love to be able to share it and hopefully get it published. It is the first of the 3, so I'll need to kind of keep moving along here soon. But thank you so much for having me and for honoring my work with this award. I feel very seen, very visible, very recognized in a very small little niche area of government and scholarship. It's remarkable to be considered for this award along with Dr. Schatz. I've read his work, and I probably will need to cite him for solidarity at this point, and knowing that David Weil also received this award back in 2015, and I have cited him to death as the former director of the Wage and Hour Division. So I feel very part of a wonderful and respectable group, and thank you again for such an honor.
Terrific. So we have a few more, so I'm going to move on to Ron, and then we have 2 after him. And so we're doing well. And Ron, congratulations, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm an experienced labor historian, done a lot of work on several different fields. Most recently, a book called The Labor Board Crew, which is actually about the founders of the LERA, or what was originally called the Industrial Relations Research Association. So John Dunlop, George Taylor, Ben Aaron, Gene McKelvey, and many others. It's a biography of all of them. But I'm moving on this time now with a new project, which is very different on the angle. You know, the people in the field of LERA and before the IRA are all about cooperation, seeking cooperation between labor and management. Well, that's not always the story. I want to focus on a biography of James Caesar Petrillo, who was the president of the Musicians Union for 30 years. And in his time, in the 1940s, he was as famous or more famous than John L. Lewis and better paid than any other union leader in the country. But they didn't operate in those days. It's not about cooperation. Cooperation? Hell, cooperation. When he originally started, he's in charge of their local in Chicago. Oh, all right. You go to the club and you say, we want a contract. Don't want a contract? Fine. You threaten to break their knees or burn their store down. That's how you do it. That's how it's done. That's how he got power. That's how he became, when other unions were failing in the 20s, his was thriving. That's how he, and likewise, when he becomes president of the International. And this is a time when musicians' work was being undermined by new technologies, the radio, the jukebox, the record players, ultimately the talkies in the movies, ultimately television. He was determined to protect the workers' power, or more particularly their money. And he fought hard, and for a while quite successfully. I mean, we think of, for instance, that there was no strikes by workers during World War II. All the musicians went on strike, or rather they refused to record any music, except patriotic songs. They would play the Star Spangled Banner, nothing else. And the government couldn't stop. And they forced these companies to come to terms. And they did this for more, in his career, for more than 30 years. Ultimately, he was vanquished. It's a great story. It's a terrible story. The guy was a dictator. But it's a story that is more like, you know, he's from the west side of Chicago. I'm from Chicago. I know a little bit, if only sort of, about what that real world was like. And it was you got to understand it if you understand labor and labor relations and with management and employers. And so that's the story I'm going to be telling. And I've begun the research using these funds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ron. And I have a little background noise, so I'm going to switch right to the next recipient, who is Owen Herstead, who is also here today with us. And welcome, Owen, and congratulations.
Hi, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Unfortunately, you can see me. I'm in my car. I was trying to turn off the video. But anyway, look, I want to say thanks to everyone, particularly Janice and Rose. Janice, we've worked together for many years, and I've truly appreciated it. I really want to thank LERA. Like Chris Tilley, I joined LERA when I was in graduate school, and I grew up with, well, the IRA and then LERA, and it's meant so much to me over the years. And I'm, really humbled by this award, and it means so very much to me. I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to keep my comments very, very short. Thank you.
Oh, and well, I'm gonna take the liberty of saying we'll spill over just a couple of minutes. So does anyone want to just ask Owen? Well, let's just hear what you're doing right now, other than being in your car.
Can I?
Well,
Can I interrupt? Since I
Yeah.
know Owen has stepped down after how many years? 30 years from the machinist. But what I was going to say, Owen, as a lawyer, and one very, very interested in international, how could I put this? I want to say to all of you, one of the most impressive things about Owen is so many labor lawyers in the United States just pay attention to the United States, but because of being a lawyer for the machinist and because the machinist or metal workers usually set the pace in most countries, I think Owen was particularly great in being active for US unions and the International Metal Workers Federation and really thinking about how we could advance the cause of workers. But I wanted to ask, what did you find the hardest thing as being a labor lawyer and working for a union? Besides politics, that's
keeping the faith was the hardest thing. Although, you know, I mean, I've lost a lot of hair over the years, and I knew I was going to lose hair working for a labor union. But I'll tell you what the best thing was, and that overshadowed any of the more difficult things, and that was just working with folks day in and day out and trying to do the best you could to not only help them, but, you know, workers help me. They help me grow, they help me learn, and, you know, continue to do so. So, and also, you know, meeting great folks like, you know, you and all the academics that I've met through LERA and et cetera on that.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to Steve Greenhouse and take it away. He is the, oops, I've got to move my screen here so you can see. He is the outstanding scholar practitioner. I'm sorry, I'm closing off the, go ahead, Steve, take it away. The Outstanding Scholar Practitioner Award.
Thank you very much. I'm truly honored. And, you know, this is such a terrific group, people I've respected for a long time, Doug and Debbie and Chris and Francoise and Ron Schatz, whom I've known forever, and Owen. And I feel really blessed to receive this honor from two of my favorite people in industrial and labor relations, Rose and Janice. And I could talk for many minutes about how wonderful the two of you are, but not enough time right now. So when I first began as a labor reporter for the New York Times back in 1995, 27 years ago, a lot of friends said I was crazy to take such a beat. You know, Steve, you had been in the Paris Bureau of the New York Times. Why take such an unsexy beat like labor? It's a dying field. I'm happy to say that my friends and, you know, my friends have proved wrong, that history has proved them wrong. I'd like to think I did pretty well covering the labor beat. And I'm proud to say that now there are many other labor reporters. You know, for a while, I was the only full-time, you know, daily newspaper labor reporter in the country. Now we have Michael Sonato and Margaret Roosevelt and Katie Johnson and Eli Rosenberg and Lauren K. Gurley and Edward Agnesi and Juliana Reyes and Sarah Jaffe and Michelle Chan, Noam Scheiber, Josh Idelson, Hamilton Nolan, and many more. And it's great to feel like, you know, this field has grown. So Rosie asked, what are we doing now? What am I doing now? At the New York Times, I was an insane workaholic for 31 years. So I've tried to step back somewhat. I try to write more thoughtful pieces, bigger pieces. I try not to compete with all these, you know, smarter, more energetic, younger people than I am, like someone like Lauren K. Gurley. You know, you can't begin to compete with her. She's so great, and Josh too. And the pandemic made me a little shy about running out to do interviews. So I try to step back and write more articles about what it all means. I did a big piece about how unions can help protect our democracy or what's left of our democracy. I've done many pieces about Trump might have said he's the best friend of workers, but here are 83 reasons why Trump is not a friend of workers. I'm working on a big piece right now about what exactly has Joe Biden done for workers and where has he fallen short. I feel blessed that I've been, you know, writing about labor for more than 25 years. That has given me some credibility. It's given me a platform, and I try to use the platform. Although I left the New York Times over 8 years ago, I try to use the platform I have, to write stories, hopefully important stories about what folks are doing right, about, Chris Small's huge success in organizing Amazon, the huge success of organizing Starbucks. And I try to write what some folks are doing wrong, try to do a dissection of the many ways that Amazon is really a brutal union buster. I've written about, what Starbucks is trying to do to crush its unionization effort. 30 more seconds. Lastly, I want to sing the praises of LERA. I think LERA is a terrific group. It's all these, earnest, fair-minded, sensitive people. They're often very considerate. They're all trying to kind of help create a better society, make things better for workers. I've been to law school, I've been to journalism school, I've taken business school courses, and like the people there, they don't seem, they seem to have much more of an ego problem than many of the people at LERA. I find LERA people, believing in teamwork, believing in working together, believing, as is always the case in labor relations, you have to figure out how to get together, work together, get to yes to make things better for everyone. And I find LERA just I was going to use the word joyful place to work, but a very good, earnest, fair-minded, honest place. And I've enjoyed and appreciated and learned a ton from my years being active in LERA. And I will stop there. And thanks again for this wonderful honor.
Thank you all, first of all, for being succinct and telling your story. I think this was a really rich session. I really loved hearing more about people, and particularly now, since we can't Google you and find out what's going on right this minute. We can only see your history. And it's just very, very exciting. I think Janice and I had a great time with the committee. I want to do kudos to the committee and all the nominations. What I think is great is we're honoring you, but in a field of other stellar nominees that will be awarded in years to come. So a quick, any closure, Janice or anyone else?
No, I just thank everybody for participating and being interactive. I just really, as Rose said, this is a great group, and it also shows the many different the different fields and the different specialties we all have, and it makes it much richer. I really enjoy this group, like Steve was saying. It's fun.
Yeah. And stay active in LERA. What I love is I also started 30 years ago, and while there are people here I know, there are people just right here in this small group that I don't know, and I'm just glad that that's true, because we keep getting new blood and oldsters that come in with new blood. So thank you all, and kudos to all. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.